There was a question, an excellent one, about the reference to European nationals, and the question was, can you explain why Appendix FM is for non-EU nationals only? An excellent question. There is a bit of nuance around that, so I'm going to hand over to Lauren to respond, please. Thank you, Lauren.
Hi Gemma, thank you.
Hi,
Can
yeah, thank you so much.
Sorry. The reason why this category is not specific to EU nationals is because if EU nationals are already in the UK and they're applied under the EU settlement scheme, so they hold pre-settled or settled status, then their family members would apply under Appendix EU instead of Appendix FM, and the requirements are similar, but not exact. So that would require more information there.
Super, thank you so much, Lauren. And yeah, exactly, just to reiterate, because of the B word, there are slightly different situations now for European nationals. The law has become more involved as a result of that, but really that the reference there is to the individual that the applicant would be joining in the UK. Where that individual is already in the UK and they are European, if they have status under Appendix EU, again, not terribly original naming there, that's Appendix European Union, there is a different route under which their family members can apply to come to the UK. It's quite an involved area that has reference to both family permits and then residence cards once here. Again, as I said, we'll be working closely with Caroline moving forward, so if there's appetite for a webinar specific to that subject matter, then absolutely we'd be happy to do that, but it is something that really deserves its whole independent webinar, because it's a very nuanced area of the law.
Gemma, can I just butt in a second?
Please.
Caroline here. At what point will that change for EU nationals, so British citizens who have family members in Europe that want to come to the UK?
Yeah, no, absolutely, great question. So where the person that the applicant will be joining in the UK is British, most likely their family members will apply under Appendix FM, even if they're European. The nuance in relation to Appendix EU is where the person in the UK themselves, so the person that the applicant will be joining, is European. So if we think of it as two different cohorts. Cohort one are where the applicant will be joining a British national or somebody who is settled in the UK. Cohort two is where applicants will be joining a European national in the UK. So that's the distinction. It's the individual the person is joining. Where they are British or settled in the UK, their applicant family member will be making an application under Appendix FM. Where the person that they are joining in the UK is European and has status under Appendix EU, most likely their family member will be making an application under Appendix EU. I would say it is really very nuanced, and it depends when the relationship began, whether that was pre or post the end of the transition period, i.e. the 31st December 2020. So it might just behove us to have a separate webinar on that, just to address those very specific queries. There was a very good question. Would love to know, if my partner has permanent residence, does he count as settled? Yes, indeed. So if your partner has indefinite leave to remain, so let's say, for example, somebody was in the UK on a work permit, they work for 5 years and can apply for indefinite leave to remain. Once they have that status, they count as settled in the UK. So a family member could make an application under Appendix FM. Similarly, if somebody were in the UK as a student, then as a graduate, so we're in the UK for a continuous period of 10 years and applied for indefinite leave to remain on that basis, they would get indefinite leave to remain and then would be deemed as settled in the UK. So a family member could make an application under Appendix FM. Another good question, can the partner work in the UK once the visa is issued, and does the employment have to be at the 18,600 threshold? Yes, once the partner has their work permit, they can work in the UK without restriction to the resident labour market. They can work in an employed capacity, they can work in a self-employed capacity as they wish. Their employment doesn't have to be at the 18,600 threshold, just really, national minimum wage essentially. But, as and when they've been here for that 2.5 years and are looking to extend, once they're doing that, if they wanted to rely on their income solely to meet the minimum income requirement moving forward, then their income would have to be at the 18,600 threshold. One question, when the cash savings come from sale of property, do they have to be held in the bank account for at least 6 months? I believe the answer to that is yes, because the savings, irrespective of how they are generated, whether it's sale of property or just hypothetically an inheritance or similar, the Home Office still want to see that bank statements evidencing 6 months of holding that capital. So if someone were to apply and the money had just come into their account, unfortunately, that would not facilitate the application.
Gemma, could I ask for clarification on quite an important point? In terms of the income requirement on first application, the 18,600 must be earned by the British partner and isn't a combined salary including the non-British partner, isn't that right?
That's absolutely right. Yes, that is indeed the case.
Yeah. And then following the further leave to remain will be based on combined income.
Yeah, exactly that. So where the initial application is being made from overseas, I know it seems arbitrary and it is rather unfair, but unfortunately the position from the Home Office is that where you are applying from overseas, only the income of the British national can be borne in mind. So, even if the applicant, let's hypothetically say they're Trinidadian, even if the Trinidadian applicant was commanding a really, really good salary, where they're making their first application from overseas, unfortunately, it is not something that the Home Office will consider. But once they're in the UK and making that application to extend, or if they're making their first application from within the UK because perhaps they're here on a student visa, then their salary can be borne in mind. It's just that initial application from overseas where the focus from the UK authorities' perspective is on the income of the British national or settled partner.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very conscious of time, so I'm just having a quick look for any questions to which I can quickly respond. Oh, someone had a question about a list of cohabitation documents. So there isn't a sort of an exact list that the Home Office want to see, but the kind of thing they'd be looking for is joint bank statements. Evidence of combined financial evidence is something they really like to see. Utility bills in joint names, leases in joint names, property ownership documents, so title deeds, for example, in joint names. Those are all the kind of things that they like to see. I'm terribly sorry, guys. I'm conscious that we're at time and I myself do have to jump for another meeting. The questions about Appendix EU and such, Caroline, if you're able to send them over to me, what I'll do is put together a couple of paragraphs which will hopefully clarify that for everyone, because I appreciate it is a really nuanced area.
And what we'll do, I've written all the questions down as well.
Brilliant, so, thank you.
What would be great is if we send them across and then we can do like a fact sheet based on the questions that we've been asked.
That sounds great.
And then we can send that out to everybody. And in the meantime, any other questions you may have, do send them to me at my email, which I'll just put in now. And indeed, if you would like any other sort of more specific webinars, like with the EU, for example, then please do let me know. This is the first one that we have done and with Fragomen, so we are very keen to get some feedback as well. And we'll send the recording and the slides after the session. I don't think there's anything else that I can say. And yeah, do join our Facebook group if affected by the rules or are navigating the process. It's a peer support, lived experience, private community where you can ask lots of questions. But thank you so much to Fragomen for your time this morning. We will be looking at doing another one at some point, but it will be on our website, and we will put it in our Facebook group as well, so you will have access to this recording.
Thank you everybody so much. I do apologise that we weren't able to get to all the questions, but exactly as Caroline said, what we'll do is put together an FAQ that tries to address as many of them as possible, specifically looking at the income requirement, because I wholeheartedly appreciate that's the most stress-inducing element, I think, and also addressing those nuances between the distinction of applicants coming under Appendix FM and Appendix EU.